It was Rebecca's 45th birthday, and I woke up before dawn, as though anticipation itself had shaken me from sleep. For weeks I had planned this day with the same devotion I once reserved for her childhood birthdays, when balloons and homemade cakes transformed our modest kitchen into a kingdom. But this time, I wanted perfection. I had ordered her favorite cake, a decadent chocolate layered with fresh strawberries, from the bakery downtown that still wrapped their goods with a flourish of ribbon. $200. For most people, absurd. For me, nothing compared to the hope of seeing my daughter smile again. I remember the way the box felt in my hands that morning, light in weight yet crushingly heavy with meaning. I held it carefully, like it might break, or perhaps like my heart might if this day did not go as I dreamed. I had chosen every detail: the glossy chocolate glaze, the strawberries arranged like jewels, the candles already nestled in their places, waiting for Rebecca's breath. This was not just a cake, it was a prayer baked into sugar and flour, a symbol that despite the years of distance growing between us, I still knew her, still remembered the child she once was. Driving to her house, the quiet streets seemed to whisper memories back to me. How many times had I carried cakes before? The 5th birthday, when she wanted a princess castle. The 12th birthday, when she asked for a simple chocolate because she was too grown up for decorations. The year she went to college and I mailed cupcakes overnight, just so she would not feel forgotten. Each memory stitched itself around my heart as I pulled into her driveway. And there it was, the house. The house I had financed, brick by brick, with 40 years of sweat from hospital shifts, nights where I scrubbed blood from my hands and soothed the dying before returning home too tired to eat. $50,000 I had pulled from savings to give Rebecca and David a start. It had been a gift of love, of security, a mother's sacrifice laid in stone. I looked at it now, gleaming in the morning sun, and felt pride mixed with an ache so deep it surprised me. This house should have been a symbol of closeness, of family roots. Instead, it loomed like a wall. I climbed the porch steps with the cake pressed to my chest. My heart beat wildly, the foolish hope of a mother who still believed in miracles. I imagined Rebecca's face lighting up, imagined her arms around me, imagined that maybe today would be different. That maybe, just maybe, she would let me in not just into her house, but into her life again. I knocked on the door, my smile wide and trembling. The door opened, and all those hopes collapsed. Rebecca stood there, framed in the doorway like a stranger carved out of someone I used to know. Her beauty was undeniable, her hair smooth as silk, her dress elegant, her jewelry glittering. But her expression cut me like a knife. Her eyes, once wide with wonder, now carried only impatience. Her lips curled not in joy, but in disdain. "Oh, it's you," she muttered. My smile faltered, but I forced it back. A mother's instinct is always to protect, even from the truth. "Happy birthday, my love," I said softly, lifting the cake forward like an offering, like a shield. "I brought your favorite chocolate with strawberries, just like when you were little." The candles stood ready, waiting for her wish. But instead of gratitude, Rebecca sighed, long and heavy, as though my presence were a weight on her chest. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly. She stepped aside, and I entered the house that my savings had bought, the house where love had turned into distance. Inside, the living room glowed with morning light. Every piece of furniture was polished, curated, expensive. The air smelled faintly of perfume and something unfamiliar coldness, perhaps. I sat carefully on the sofa, cake balanced on my knees, as Rebecca took a seat across from me. Her posture was straight, her gaze unflinching, her tone rehearsed. "I've been thinking about my birthday," she began, each word deliberate, about presents, about what would truly make me happy. My heart leapt, eager to please. "Of course, sweetheart, anything. Tell me, and I'll get it for you. A trip, some jewelry, maybe that new car you mentioned." My voice shook with anticipation, as if love could still buy me a place in her life. Rebecca's eyes locked on mine. They were cold, unrecognizable, void of the little girl I had once raised. Her words fell slowly, like poison dripping from a vial. "The one thing I'd love most as a birthday present," she said, "is for you to just die." The world stopped. My breath caught, My heart slammed against my ribs, and the cake box in my lap suddenly felt like it contained bricks. Her words echoed in the silence, growing louder with each repeat in my mind. Die. D. What? I whispered, my voice so thin I could barely hear it. What did you just say? You heard me. Her tone was steady, almost casual, as if she were asking for a glass of water. I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of the calls, the visits, of you always being here. My life would be so much easier if you would just disappear. My hands began to shake so violently the candles rattled against the box. 72 years of life, 45 years of motherhood, all the sacrifices I had made condensed into this moment where my daughter told me my death would be her gift. Rebecca, I cried, voice breaking, I'm your mother. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you. Exactly, she snapped, standing suddenly, her shadow looming over me. And that's why I can't breathe. You suffocate me. I need freedom. I need you to stop weighing down my life with your drama and your emotional needs. The cake in my lap now felt like a cruel joke. My dream of laughter, of candles blown out in joy, turned to ash. But honey, I tried again, desperation twisting my words. I just want to be close to you, to be part of your life. You're all I have. And that's exactly the problem, she said coldly. The fact that I'm all you have. Go get a life of your own and leave me alone. Her words pierced me deeper than any knife could. I rose slowly, my legs trembling beneath me, clutching the cake as though it might anchor me to the floor. My heart was racing so hard I thought the walls of her perfect home might echo its frantic beat. I can't believe you're saying this, I whispered, my voice breaking. After everything I've done for you. Rebecca's laughter filled the room, sharp and mocking. It wasn't the warm giggle of the little girl who once curled against me while I read bedtime stories. It was brittle, cruel, and foreign. Everything you've done? She sneered. Mom, everything you've done has been about you, to feel important, to control me, but I'm not a child anymore. Each word was like acid, burning away the fragile remnants of hope inside me. I turned toward the door, each step heavy, as though the floor itself resisted letting me leave. At the threshold, I stopped and looked back one last time. I searched her face for regret, for hesitation, for any flicker of the love we once shared. But her expression was clear: impatience, irritation, a silent command for me to vanish. Happy birthday, Rebecca, I murmured, my voice cracking like broken glass. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me with a softness that belied the storm raging in my chest. I did not know then that it would be the last time I entered that house as the mother who had given everything. In that moment, something inside me shifted a dormant place, buried under decades of sacrifice, stirred awake. When I arrived at my small apartment, the silence felt crushing. My legs buckled beneath me, and I sank onto my worn sofa, the same sofa where I once nursed Rebecca as a baby, where I held her through fevers, where I read fairy tales until my voice grew hoarse. Now it held only me, trembling, broken. The cake landed in the trash, its glossy frosting smeared against the cardboard, the candles melting into waxy tears. I sat there staring, my hands shaking, my chest heaving with sobs. The image of her cold eyes replayed in my mind, the sound of her words drilling into me. Die. My daughter wished me gone, erased from her life. How did we get here? I whispered into the empty room. How could the child I carried, the child I loved, wish for my death? Memories came flooding, unstoppable and merciless. I saw her at 3 years old, her tiny body racked with pneumonia. I remembered rushing to the hospital pharmacy, desperate, clutching a prescription for antibiotics insurance wouldn't cover. $1,200. I sold my mother's jewelry, her wedding band, her pearls, just to buy that medicine. Rebecca survived, and when she smiled weakly at me days later, I told myself it had been worth every sacrifice. I saw her at 16, twirling before the mirror in that pink prom dress. $800. I had worked weekends for months to afford it. The moment she hugged me, whispering, "Thank you, Mom. You're the best," I believed I had given her the world. I saw her in college, calling me in tears after changing majors again. $42,000 I paid in tuition, taking out a second mortgage on my house. I told her, Don't worry, honey. Your education is more important than anything else. I said it because I believed it. Her wedding, how could I forget? $35,000, the elegant ballroom, the flowers she picked without checking the price tags, the music that played until dawn. I signed check after check with a smile, whispering, "My princess deserves the best." Then the house where she had just humiliated me, $150,000 drained from my retirement savings. I handed it over without hesitation, telling her, "Don't worry about the down payment. I'll take care of it." And it didn't stop there. When David lost his job, I paid their mortgage for 8 months, $16,000, while I ate rice and beans to stretch my pension. When the twins needed braces, I covered the $4,000. When Rebecca wanted to go out, I babysat for free, night after night, believing it was my duty, my joy. The receipts sat in boxes in my desk, proof not of mistrust but of pride. I pulled them out now, spreading them across the table like shattered pieces of my life. Numbers blurred through tears as I did the math. Raising her, at least $200,000. College, $42,000. Wedding, $35,000. The house, $150,000. Mortgage payments, $16,000. Braces, $4,000. Gifts over the years, $10,000 more. $460,000, nearly $500,000. I pressed my trembling hands against the table. $500,000 for love. $500,000 invested in a daughter who now wished me gone. If I had saved it, invested it, I could be living comfortably, traveling, enjoying the retirement I had earned. Instead, I sat alone in a dim apartment, counting pennies and tears. My chest heaved with grief so strong I thought it might kill me. And yet, beneath the grief, a strange clarity began to rise, sharp and bitter. I picked up the phone, dialing her number, clinging to the last thread of hope that perhaps I had misunderstood. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice laced with annoyance. "What do you want now, Mom?" "Rebecca," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Did you really mean what you said to me today?" "Of course I meant it," she replied coldly. Not a flicker of hesitation. "Mom, it's time you understood. I need space. Your obsession with me isn't healthy." "Obsession?" I repeated, stunned, tears spilling down my cheeks. "You call a mother's love obsession?" "Yes," she said flatly. "Exactly that. And I hope after today, you finally get the message." And then the line went dead. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, the silence roaring louder than any scream. There was no misunderstanding, no room for hope, only truth raw, merciless, final. I lowered the phone onto the table, staring at the receipts scattered around me, proof of every sacrifice, every dollar, every ounce of love I had poured into her life, proof that in her eyes, none of it mattered. For the first time in decades, I felt something inside me shift, not just pain, not just sorrow, but the spark of a realization I could no longer ignore. My life had been built on sacrifice, on pouring myself out until I was empty. And now, standing in that emptiness, I began to wonder, what if I had been wrong all along? My daughter truly believed that my love was a burden, that my presence in her life was a problem she needed to solve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment we had shared, every hug, every "I love you, Mom" that had come from her lips. Had it all been a lie? Or had I simply raised a daughter who had become so selfish that she couldn't see beyond her own needs? At 3:0 the morning, something changed inside of me. The sadness began to transform into Untitled, something different, into anger, into indignation, into the clear understanding that I had been used, manipulated, and discarded like a used tissue. My daughter wanted me to die. Well, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she asked for. The next day, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The sadness had given way to something more powerful, determination. If my daughter wanted me to disappear from her life, I would, but not in the way she expected. I put on my best clothes and went out with a defined purpose. First stop, the bank where I had a joint account with Rebecca for her. House's emergency expenses. That account I had opened just in case, and in which I had deposited $20,000 for any unforeseen events that might arise. Good. Morning, Mrs. Johnson, greeted the manager, Mr. Martinez, who had known me for years. How can I help you today? I want to close joint. Account number 458728891, I said with a smile that he interpreted as kindness, but which was in reality pure vengeance. Are you sure? That account has a considerable balance of $20,000, he warned, checking his computer screen. Completely sure. I want to transfer all of that money to my personal account, I replied, signing the papers with a steady hand. Seeing those $20,000 return to my personal account gave me a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning. Next stop, the mortgage loan office. During the past year, when David was unemployed, I had co-signed their mortgage. That meant that if they couldn't pay, the responsibility fell on me, but it also meant that I had rights to that property. Mrs. Johnson, the loan officer, Miss Williams, greeted me. What brings you here? I want to review the mortgage contract where I appear as a co-signer, I explained. I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are. While she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Rebecca had cried with emotion. Thank you, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're our savior, she had said, hugging me tight. David had also thanked me, promising me they would never have late payments. Here are the documents, Miss Williams said, placing a thick folder in front of me. As a co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them, but you also have the right to reclaim the property if you believe the debtors won't be able to fulfill their obligations. Exactly, I completed, examining the papers carefully. Is there a problem with the payments? She asked with professional concern. I'm evaluating the situation, I replied, putting a copy of all the great documents in my bag. What would I have to do if I decided to exercise my rights? As co-signer? You would have to demonstrate that there's a risk of default or that there have already been significant delays. In your case, I see that you covered 8 months of payments last year, which is already sufficient evidence that the primary holders lack financial stability. Perfect. David had lost his job again last week, information that Rebecca had given me without thinking about the implications. She thought she was asking for help indirectly, but what she was really giving me were the weapons for my revenge. I left that office with a smile. My dear daughter had no idea of the storm that was brewing. Third stop, my personal lawyer, Mr. Anel Adams, a 70-year-old man who had been a friend of my late husband's. He knew my entire family situation and had witnessed my sacrifices for Rebecca for decades. Julieta, he greeted me warmly. What? Brings you to my office? It's not common to see you here. Anil, I need your help. With something very important, I told him, sitting in front of his desk. I want to completely change my will. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Has something happened with Rebecca? I told him everything. Every hurtful word, every moment of contempt, the coldness with which she had wished for my death on her own birthday. And now listened to me, in silence, his expression becoming more serious with each detail. Julieta, he said finally, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I never thought Rebecca was capable of something like that after everything you've done for her. Me neither, I sighed. But I've made my decision. I want to change my will and leave everything to a charitable organization. I also want to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, but Rebecca can't have access to that money until they turn 25. That can be done. Anel nodded, taking notes. Do you also want to change the beneficiaries of your life insurance? Of course, anything with Rebecca's name on it. I want to change it. My daughter wants me to die, but when I do, she's not going to receive a single penny from me. We spent 2 hours reviewing all my legal documents, my $100,000 life insurance policy, my savings, my apartment, my investments, everything that had once been designated for. Rebecca would now go to the Orphans Foundation, where I had worked as a volunteer for years. "There's something else," I said when we were finishing. "I want you to prepare all the documents to reclaim the house where Rebecca lives. As the co-signer of the mortgage, I have rights, and her husband just lost his job again." Annelle's eyes lit up with understanding. "Now I see where you're going with all of this. Are you sure you want to go that far?" "Completely sure," I replied with a determination that surprised even myself. "My daughter told me her life would be easier if I disappeared. Well, I'm going to disappear, but first, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what it means to live without me and without everything I've done for her." When I left Annelle's office, it was already dark. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood feeling renewed, as if I had woken up from a very long dream. For 45 years I had lived for Rebecca. I had sacrificed my own dreams and desires to give her everything she wanted, but no more. I got back to my apartment and poured myself a glass of wine, something I hadn't done in years. Toasting myself was something completely new, but it felt incredibly liberating. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had saved months ago, but had never dared to use. It was for a travel agency specializing in retirees that offered packages for living abroad. "Good evening. This is Julieta Johnson," I said when they answered. "I saw your promotion about living in Switzerland. Could you send me complete information?" "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Switzerland is a very popular destination among our clients. We have several programs, from temporary stays to permanent residency. What kind of information do you need?" "Everything," I replied without hesitation. "I want to know everything about how a 72-year-old person can start a new life in Switzerland." After hanging up, I stood at the window looking out at the city where I had lived my entire life. Soon, all of this would be just a memory. My daughter had. I asked for my disappearance as a birthday gift, and I was going to grant it to her in the most spectacular way possible. What Rebecca didn't know was that her wish was about to become her worst nightmare. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Every morning I woke up with a mix of pain and determination that pushed me forward with my plan. It was as if I had woken from a long slumber where I had lived only to please my daughter, and now, finally, I was living for myself. On Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. For a moment, my heart sped up, thinking that maybe she had reconsidered, that she might apologize for the terrible words she had said. How naive I still was. "Mom," she said in that cold voice she had adopted lately, "I need you to do me a favor. Not even a hello or how are you?" She went straight to the point, as if I were her personal assistant. "What do you need?" I asked, curious to see how far her audacity would go. "The twins have a presentation at school on Friday, and David and I have an important work dinner. Could you watch them that night?" The irony was delicious. The same woman who had wished for my death as a birthday gift was now asking me to watch her children as if nothing had happened, as if I were a resource available 24/7. "I can't," I replied simply. "What? Do you mean you can't?" she asked with genuine surprise. Evidently, she wasn't used to me saying no. "I have other plans," I lied with a smile she couldn't see. "What plans could you possibly have?" she asked with that condescending tone that hurt me deeply, as if at 72 years old, I didn't have the right to have a life of my own. "Plans that are none of your business," I replied, keeping my calm. "Find another sitter." "But Mom, I can't get a sitter on such short notice. Besides, since when do you charge me to watch your own grandchildren?" There it was, the emotional manipulation she had used on me for years, but this time it wouldn't work. "Since you told me that your greatest gift would be for me to die," I answered with coldness. "If you want me to disappear from your life, I'm starting now." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Rebecca let out a sarcastic laugh. "Seriously, you're going to punish me like you're a little brat," she said. "I thought after a few days the drama would be over." "It's not drama, Rebecca. It's respect for your wish. You wanted me to disappear, so that's what I'll do. Fine, she said with annoyance. If you want to be that childish, that's on you. But don't come crying later when you're lonely. She hung up without saying goodbye. Perfect. Every interaction confirmed that I was making the right decision. That afternoon, I went to the bank again, this time to do something I never thought I would: withdraw most of my savings in cash. It was $30,000 that I put in an envelope and stored in my personal safe, the money I would need for my new life in Switzerland. I also called the travel agency and confirmed my trip. A flight to Zurich for next Tuesday with the option to extend my stay indefinitely. The initial cost was $5,000, money I paid without blinking an eye. It was the most expensive and most intelligent investment I had made in years. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visit. It was my neighbor, Elvira, a 8-year-old woman who lived in the apartment next door and with whom I had developed a friendship over the past 5 years. Julieta, she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee. You look different these days. Has something happened? Elvira had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices for Rebecca. She had seen me cancel plans with her to rush over whenever my daughter needed me. She had seen the bags of expensive food I would buy to take to Rebecca while I ate canned soup to save money. I told her everything, every painful detail of what had happened on Rebecca's birthday, and also all the plans I had been making during the week. My God, Julieta, Elvira murmured, her eyes filled with tears. I can't believe Rebecca would say something so cruel to you after everything you've done for her. The worst part is that she said it as if it were the most normal thing in this world, I explained, as if I were a nuisance in her life that needed to be eliminated. And you're really going to Switzerland? Yes, I replied firmly. I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving on Tuesday. Elvira took my hands kindly. You know you have my full support, right? What Rebecca did to you is unforgivable. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I'm going to need your help with something very important. I explained my complete plan, how I wanted Rebecca to believe I had truly died, at least for a while. Elvira would be my accomplice, the person who would find my empty apartment and my farewell letter. It's brilliant, Elvira murmured with a mischievous smile. That ungrateful child is finally going to understand what it means to lose you. Will you help me? Of course I will. In fact, I think it's exactly what Rebecca needs to wake up. That night, I worked on the most important letter of my life. The letter that Rebecca would find on her table and that would change everything forever. I wrote and rewrote every word, I'm sure it conveyed exactly what I wanted to say. My dear Rebecca, the letter began, you asked me as a birthday gift to disappear from your life, and I have decided to grant your wish. When you read this letter, I will already be far from here, starting the life I should have lived about years ago instead of sacrificing it all for you. I continued writing for hours, documenting every penny I had spent on her, every sacrifice I had made, every opportunity I had missed by always being available for her needs. But it wasn't a bitter letter. It was an educational letter. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. Along with this letter, you will find all the legal documents I have signed this week, I continued writing. The change of will, the cancellation of your health insurance that I paid for, the notification that as the co-signer of your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to David's job instability and the cancellation of all financial benefits you received from me. It was a 23-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that was going to change in her life now that I had disappeared, just as she wanted. Your life will be much easier without me, the letter ended. But it will also be much more expensive. I hope it's not of the May Bowl. Worth it. On Friday night, as I was packing my most important belongings into 2 suitcases, I received a call from Rebecca. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times, but I simply let the phone ring. I had nothing left to say to her. The next day, Saturday, David appeared at my door. He looked exhausted and desperate. "Julieta," he said in a pleading voice. "Rebecca told me what happened between you two. I know what she said was wrong, but please don't do this to our family." "Do what?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Stop helping us, just withdrawing from our lives like this. The kids need you. We need you." How interesting. When Rebecca wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance. But when they realized everything I did for them, suddenly they needed me. "David," I said calmly, "your wife was very clear with me. My presence in her life is a burden she no longer wants to bear. I'm just respecting her wishes. But Julieta, you know how Rebecca is when she gets mad. She didn't mean it." "Oh, she didn't because she sounded pretty convincing when she wished for my death as a birthday gift." David lowered his head. He knew he had no argument to defend the indefensible. "Please," he insisted, "give me a chance to fix this. I'll talk to Rebecca. I'll make her understand how wrong she island." "It's too late for that," I replied, slowly closing the door. "Give my grandchildren a kiss for me." Sunday was my last day in that city. I spent the morning walking through the places that had been important in my life. The hospital where I had worked for 40 years, the park where I had taken Rebecca as a child, the church where I had married her father. It was my silent farewell to a life I had lived completely for others. On Monday, I would begin a life that I would finally live for myself. On Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of nerves or regret, but because of a strange emotion I hadn't felt in decades. The anticipation of an adventure. At 72, 2 years old, I was about to begin the life I had always dreamed of, but never dared to live. At 5:0 the morning on Monday, Elvivara knocked on my door as we had arranged. She brought fresh coffee and a knowing smile that filled me with energy. "Ready for your great escape?" she asked, winking. "More than ready," I replied, carrying my 2 suitcases to the door. "Do you have the spare keys to my apartment?" "Here they are," she said, showing me the set of keys I had given her the night before. "And I also have the letter for Rebecca and all the legal documents you're going to leave on her table. We had planned everything meticulously." Elvivara would wait until Wednesday to go to Rebecca's apartment and deliver the documents, pretending that she had found my apartment empty and had become worried about my disappearance. It would be she who would break the news to Rebecca that I was gone forever. "Remember," I said as we called a cab, you have to act very worried. Tell her I didn't answer the phone for 2 days, that you knocked on my door and I didn't respond, and that when you used the emergency keys, you found the apartment empty and the letter on her table. Don't you worry, Julieta. I was a drama teacher for 30 years. It's going to be the performance of my life, Elva told me, with a mischievous smile. The cab arrived punctually at 6:0 the morning. As they loaded my 6 suitcases, I took one last look at my apartment. I had lived there for 15 years, but strangely I didn't feel nostalgic. It was as if I was finally freeing myself from a prison I had built myself. "To the airport," the cab driver asked. "To the airport," I confirmed, and I felt as if those 2 words marked the beginning of my new existence. During the 40-minute ride, I thought about everything I was leaving behind. My volunteer work at the hospital, my daily routines, the constant worry about Rebecca and her problems. But I also thought about everything that awaited me, the freedom to make my own decisions, to spend my money on myself, to live without the constant weight of my daughter's emotional demands. At the airport, while I waited for my flight, I received 3 calls from Rebecca that I didn't answer. Then a text message came in. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. The kids are asking about you. Call me." I deleted the message without replying. It was fascinating how now that I wasn't available 24/7, she suddenly needed me. The flight to Zurich was long but peaceful. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was. No one could call me to ask for favors, money, or time. It was an intoxicating feeling of freedom I hadn't experienced since before I became a mother. During the 12-hour journey, I wrote in my journal everything that had happened in the last week. every detail, every emotion, every decision that had led me to that moment. I wanted to remember exactly what it felt like to free myself from a toxic relationship, even when the relationship was with my own daughter. I arrived in Zurich on Tuesday night, local time. A representative from the travel agency was waiting for me at the airport with a sign that had my name on it. He was a young, kind man named Klaus, who spoke perfect English. "Mrs. Johnson?" He greeted me with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Switzerland. I hope you're ready for a new adventure." More than ready," I replied. And for the first time in weeks, my smile was completely authentic. Klaus took me to a beautiful furnished apartment in the center of Zurich that he had rented for 1 month while I decided if I wanted to stay permanently. It was small but cozy, with windows that overlooked a lovely park and a partial view of the lake. "Here is all the information about the city," Klaus said, handing me a thick folder. "Places to eat, activities for people your age, German classes, social groups. I scheduled a meeting for you with a financial advisor for tomorrow afternoon to help you with the paperwork if you decide to stay permanently." That night, I slept better than I had in years. There was no phone that could ring, no one who needed anything from me, no responsibilities beyond taking care of myself. On Wednesday morning, I woke up early and went out to explore the city. I had breakfast at a charming cafe by the lake. I bought fresh flowers for my temporary apartment, and for the first time in decades, I spent money on something completely unnecessary, a beautiful silk scarf that cost $100. I bought it simply because I liked it without worrying about the price or whether that money could be better invested in my daughter's needs. As I walked through the streets of Zurich, I mentally calculated how much money I had spent on Rebecca in just the last 5 years. Between the mortgage payments when David was unemployed, the twins, braces, the constant gifts, the gas to go watch the kids, the food I always brought when I visited, it had been at least $50,000. $50,000 I could have used to travel the world, to live comfortably, to fulfill the dreams I had postponed for decades. Instead, I had given it to a daughter who considered my love a burden and my daughter presence a nuisance. At 2:00 the afternoon, Zurich time, I calculated that it would be 8:00 the morning in my hometown. Elvra would be preparing to go to Rebecca's apartment to deliver the James 8 letter that would change everything. I sat on a bench by the lake and waited. I knew that in a few hours, my phone would start ringing desperately. Rebecca would finally understand what it meant to truly lose me. At 5:00 the afternoon, my phone started to vibrate. It was Rebecca. I let it ring until it stopped. Immediately it rang again. Again, Rebecca. This time I answered. "Mom," she screamed, her voice cracking. "Where are you?" "Elvra came to the house with a letter from you," she said. "You've disappeared. What's going on?" "Hello, Rebecca," I replied calmly, enjoying the Swiss lake as I spoke. "Did you read the Marketution letter yet?" "Yes, I read it." "Are you crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I'm exactly where I need to be," I replied. "Far away from you, just as you wanted." "But I didn't want this. I didn't want you to actually leave. I was just angry." I didn't mean it. There it was. Rebecca's typical tactic, minimizing the harm she had caused, making me feel guilty for reacting to her cruelty. "You didn't mean it when you told me that your greatest birthday wish was for me to die." I asked her because you sounded pretty convincing. I was just frustrated. David lost his job. Again. The kids are giving me problems at school. I'm so stressed. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. You're right. You shouldn't have. But it's done and words can't be taken back. But Mom, please come back. We need you. I need you. How interesting. Now she needed me. Now that she had read the letter about all the financial benefits she had lost. Now that she knew she could lose her Addis house. Now that she understood she would have to pay for her own health insurance and find a sitter for the twins. Do you need me or do you need my money?" I asked her directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I need you," she finally murmured, but her voice didn't sound convincing. "Rebecca, for 45 years I lived for you. I sacrificed my dreams, my money, my time, my opportunities. And when I finally needed to feel that you loved me and valued me, you told me you'd rather I was dead." Those words broke my heart in a way I will never be able to fix. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry is not enough, Rebecca. The damage is done. And you know what? Maybe it was the best thing you could have said to me, because it finally opened my eyes and made me understand that I've been living my life all wrong." "What do you mean?" "I mean that for the first time in decades, I am living for me, and it feels wonderful. Where are you, Mom? Please tell me," Rebecca begged, her voice choked with tears. "The kids are asking about their grandma. They don't understand why you haven't come to see them." It was fascinating how now that I wasn't available, the grandchildren suddenly missed me. For all those years when I canceled my plans to watch them, when I bought them expensive gifts, when I took them to the park while Rebecca went shopping, it was just what was expected of me. But now that I was gone, my absence was felt. "The kids will be fine," I replied, looking at the Swiss mountains in the distance. "They're resilient. What they will learn is that actions have consequences, and that hurtful words can destroy relationships forever." "But Mom, please, you can't just disappear like this. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick?" "How will we know?" Now she was worried about my well-being. How convenient. "Rebecca, in the last 5 years, I've had 3 episodes of high blood pressure that sent me to the hospital. Do you know how many times you visited me? None. You always had something more important to do. So don't come to me now with concerns about my health." "That's not true," she weakly protested. "It is true. The first time I was hospitalized, I called you from the emergency room. You told me you couldn't come because you had a hair appointment. The second time was David's birthday and you were celebrating. The third time you simply didn't answer the phone." The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that she remembered every single occasion perfectly. I thought it wasn't serious," she murmured. Of course, because my health was never a priority for you, but my checks were." "It's not about the money," Rebecca screamed. "It's about you. I miss you, Mom. Do you miss me, or do you miss having someone available 24/7 to solve your problems?" I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. It immediately rang again, but this time I turned it off completely. I needed peace to enjoy my first night of freedom. That night, I went out to dinner alone at an elegant restaurant by the lake. I ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, salmon with caviar that cost $80, and I drank an entire bottle of French wine. It had been years since I had given myself that kind of luxury, always thinking that the money could be useful for Rebecca. The next day, Thursday, I turned on my phone and found 7 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Rebecca and David. The messages evolved from pleas to threats. "Please, Mom, answer," the first one said. "We're so worried." The 5th one said, "If you don't answer, we're going to call the police." The 10th one threatened, "We already called the police. They said there's nothing they can do because you left a letter explaining your departure." The 15th one admitted, "The bank called us. You canceled the joint account. How are we going to pay for emergencies?" The 20th one said, "It was beautiful to see how the concern for my well-being quickly turned into panic over the financial implications of my absence." I decided to answer just one message. "I'm fine. I'm exactly where I need to be. Don't look for me." The response came in less than 5 minutes. "You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to ruin us. The mortgage lawyer called us. He says you can take our house." There it was. The truth. She wasn't worried that I might be suffering or in danger. She was worried because she had finally understood the financial implications of losing me. I replied, "Now you understand what it's worth to have me in your life. Too bad you realized it too late." That afternoon, I had my meeting with the Swiss financial advisor. He was an older, very professional man named Herr Meyer, who helped me understand all my options for permanent residency in Switzerland. With your current savings and your American pension, he explained, you can live comfortably here for the rest of your life. Switzerland has excellent medical care programs for retired foreigners, and the quality of life is exceptional. For the first time in years, I spoke openly about my finances without worrying about saving money for Rebecca's emergencies. It was liberating to calculate my expenses based solely on my own needs and desires. You can also invest part of your savings in the Swiss economy, Herr Meyer continued. The returns are stable and secure. In 5 years, you could double your assets if you invest wisely. Double my assets. How? Many times had I had that opportunity, but I had preferred to spend the money on my daughter's whims. Is there anything else I should tell you? The advisor added. We have many clients in situations similar to yours, older, people who have come to Switzerland looking for a new start after complicated family relationships. You are not alone in this experience. That information comforted me deeply. I wasn't the only mother who had been manipulated and discarded by ungrateful children. There was a whole community of people who had chosen their own happiness over the toxic demands of their families. On Friday morning, I joined a hiking group for older people. There were 8 women and 4 men, all between 60 and 75 years old, all looking for adventure and new experiences. During the bus ride, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Ingrid, a 1-year-old German who had arrived in Switzerland 2 years earlier. What brought you here? She asked me as we admired the landscape from the window. A daughter who told me that her greatest birthday wish was for me to die, I answered without filters. I know. Longer had the energy to sugarcoat the reality. Ingrid looked at me with wide eyes. Seriously? Completely seriously. After financing her house, practically raising her children, and sacrificing my retirement for her needs, she told me that my presence in her life was an unbearable burden. My goodness, Ingrid murmured. And what did you do? What? She asked. I disappeared from her life, and here I am. Ingrid smiled with admiration. You are very brave. It took me 5 years to make. The decision to walk away from my toxic family. My son and daughter-in-law treated me like an ATM with legs. For the rest of the day, Ingrid and I shared our stories. She had come to Switzerland after realizing that her adult children only contacted her when they needed money for their vacations, their new cars, or their whims. When she decided to set boundaries, they accused her of being a selfish mother and threatened not to let her see her grandchildren. The first few months were difficult. Ingrid confessed as we walked through a medieval town. Guilt ate me up. I thought maybe I was really selfish, that a good mother should always sacrifice for her children. And what changed your perspective? I asked. I realized that my children never wondered if I was happy, if I had enough money for my own needs, or if my constant sacrifices were hurting me. They only cared about what I could give them. That's not love, Julieta. That's exploitation. Her words resonated deeply in my heart. For decades, I had confused emotional manipulation with filial love, constant demands with genuine need. That night, in my apartment, I decided to turn on my phone for the last time in several days. I had 62 missed calls and 47 text messages. Most of them were from Rebecca and David, but there were also some from unknown numbers. I read the text messages chronologically, observing the evolution of my daughter's panic. The first ones were still emotional. Please, please come back. We need you. The kids are crying for you. But they gradually became more desperate and financial. The bank called us for a meeting on Friday. They say that as the co-signer you have the right to reclaim the house. They can't take our house away for a misunderstanding. By the 5th day, the messages had become aggressive. This is ridiculous, Mom. You're ruining our lives over a tantrum. Act like an adult and come back. And finally, desperate. I called all the hospitals, the police, your friends. No one knows where you are. If something happens to you, it's going to be my fault. Please just tell me you're okay. It was fascinating to observe how at no point did Rebecca genuinely apologize for wishing me dead. At no point did she acknowledge the cruelty of her words or express real remorse. It all revolved around the negative consequences my absence had for her. I decided to reply. One last message. I am perfectly fine and happier than I have been in years. What you are experiencing now are the natural consequences of your actions. I hope this experience helps you understand the value of the people you love before it's too late with others in your life. The response came immediately. Please, Mom, we can fix this. I promise I'll never say horrible things again. Just come back. I wrote my final response. Empty promises don't mend broken hearts. Rebecca, the words you said to me revealed what you really think of me. You can't take that truth back with desperate promises. After sending that message, I blocked her number and all the numbers associated with David. I also blocked the unknown numbers that had been calling me. It was time to close that chapter for good. On Monday morning, I met again with Herr Meyer to sign the papers that would allow me to reside permanently in Switzerland. I also made arrangements to permanently transfer my American pension and begin the process of selling my apartment in my hometown. Are you sure you want to make this permanent? Harry asked me. It's a very big decision. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied, signing each document with a firm hand. For the first time in decades, I am making decisions based on my own happiness, not on the demands of others. That afternoon, I received a call from Elvira, my dear neighbor and accomplice. Her voice sounded excited. Julieta, I have to hear this, she said. Rebecca came to my apartment yesterday crying hysterically. She begged me to tell you to come back, that it had been a terrible misunderstanding. And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her the truth, that what she had said to you was unforgivable, and that if I were you, I would have disappeared. Forever, too. You should have seen her face when she realized that even her neighbors knew how cruel she had been to you. Did she mention anything about the financial problems? I asked with curiosity. Oh yes, she told me that without your help they can't pay the mortgage, that the bank is pressuring them, that David can't find a stable job, and that the kids need things for school that they can't afford. Basically, she realized everything you did for them when she lost it. It was exactly what I had expected. She didn't miss me as a person. She missed my dot of cost, function as a financial provider and problem solver. Elvira, I told her, when someone asks about me, especially Rebecca, I want you to tell them that I'm dead to them because in a sense, it's true. The Julieta who constantly sacrificed herself for an ungrateful daughter really died on her birthday. I understand perfectly, Elva replied. And you know what? I think it's the best death you could have chosen. 3 weeks after my arrival in Switzerland, my new life had taken shape in ways I never imagined. I had enrolled in German classes 3 times a week. I had started a watercolor painting course on Tuesdays and Thursdays and had joined a book club for expats that met on Sundays. For the first time in decades, my calendar was full of activities that I had chosen. Activities that gave me pleasure and personal growth. But the most surprising thing was the money. Without Rebecca's constant financial demands, my savings not only remained stable, but they were growing. The investments I had made with Herr Meyer were already showing positive returns, and for the first time, I could calculate my financial future based solely on my own needs. On that Thursday morning, as I had breakfast at my favorite cafe by the lake, I received a call from an international number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mrs. Julieta Johnson? A female voice with an American accent asked. Yes, this is she. Who's calling? My name is Sarah Williams. I'm a social worker in the Family Services Department in your hometown. I'm calling because we've received a complaint about your well-being. My blood ran cold. A complaint? What kind? Your daughter, Rebecca Johnson, filed a complaint alleging that you may be suffering from dementia or cognitive decline and that you've made financial and life decisions that put you at risk. According to her, you disappeared suddenly and are living in precarious conditions abroad. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rebecca had gone to the extreme of involving social services, inventing a mental illness to invalidate my decisions and force my return. Miss Williams, I replied in a firm voice, I do not suffer from dementia or cognitive decline. I am living in Switzerland by my own choice, in a comfortable apartment with excellent medical care and in perfect mental health. My daughter's allegations are completely false. I understand your position, Mrs. Johnson, but we need to verify your well-being. Would it be possible to coordinate a medical and psychological evaluation through the American consulate in Switzerland? Of course, I replied without hesitation. I am willing to undergo any evaluation that demonstrates I am in perfect mental health, and that my decisions have been made with complete lucidity. After coordinating the details for the evaluation, I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of rage and disbelief. Rebecca had crossed a line of no return. Not only had she wished me dead, but now she was trying to destroy my mental credibility to regain control over my present, money, and my life. I immediately called my lawyer, NL, back in my hometown. Julieta, he greeted me with concern. I'm glad to hear your voice. I've had a very interesting week with your daughter. I bet you have. I just spoke with social services. Rebecca is accusing me of having dementia. That's not all, Anel sighed. She also hired another lawyer to try to challenge all the legal changes you made before you left. She's alleging that you weren't in your right mind when you signed them. Can she do that? She can try, but she doesn't have solid past legal grounds. I have recordings of all our conversations where you clearly demonstrate total lucidity. Furthermore, the fact that you meticulously planned your departure and are living independently in Switzerland contradicts any allegations of cognitive decline. What else is she doing? She has tried to access your bank accounts, alleging concern for your well-being. She also wanted to stop the process of reclaiming the house, but since everything is legally backed, and she herself signed the documents where she acknowledges that David lost his job again, she has no valid arguments. It was incredible how far Rebecca was willing to go to get back the financial benefits she had lost. Anel, I want you to prepare a defamation lawsuit against my daughter. Her false allegations about my mental state could affect my reputation and my legal rights. It would be my pleasure, Ansel replied with satisfaction. After seeing how she has treated you, I think it's time for her to face the legal consequences of her actions. 2 days later, I showed up at the American consulate in Zurich for the medical and psychological evaluations. The American doctor who examined me was an older, experienced man who immediately understood the situation. Mrs. Johnson, he told me, after an exhaustive 3-hour evaluation, not only are you in perfect mental health, but the decisions you have made demonstrate admirable lucidity and courage. Your daughter is clearly trying to manipulate the legal system to recover financial benefits. That will be officially documented. Absolutely. I'll send a detailed report to social services explaining that her allegations are unfounded and that you are living an independent and healthy life in Switzerland. That same afternoon, I received a call from the social worker. Mrs. Johnson, we have received the medical report from the consulate. It is clear that your daughter's allegations are baseless. We are going to close the case and notify Rebecca that her complaints were unfounded. Thank you, I replied. Will this be in some kind of record? Yes, it will be documented that she filed a false complaint about a family member's well-being, which could have legal implications if it is repeated. Perfect. Rebecca had not only failed in her attempt to invalidate my decisions, but now she had an official record of filing false complaints. That night, I decided to do something I had been putting off, write an open letter detailing my entire experience, not for Rebecca, but for other mothers who might be living in similar situations of manipulation and emotional abuse from adult children. I wrote for 4 hours documenting every sacrifice I had made, every manipulation I had suffered, and every step I had taken to reclaim my dignity and my life. It was a 20-page letter that I titled, "When a Mother's Love Becomes Self-Destruction, My Story of Liberation at 72. I decided to send the letter to an online blog I had discovered that specialized in stories of older women who had found the courage to radically change their lives. A week later, I received an enthusiastic response from the editor. "Julieta," she wrote, "your story is powerful and inspiring. We have received hundreds of comments from women who completely identify with your experience. Would you be willing to participate in a video interview for our YouTube channel?" I accepted immediately. It was time to use my experience to help other women who were trapped in toxic family dynamics. The interview was published 2 weeks later and quickly went viral. Thousands of women shared similar stories of adult children who emotionally manipulated them and financially exploited them. The comments were a catalog of pain and recognition. "My 40-year-old son lives in my house, doesn't pay rent, and yells at me when I ask him to look for a job." One woman wrote, "My daughter only calls me when she needs money for her vacations, but she never has time to visit me when I'm sick." Another shared, "I thought I was the only mother who felt used by her own children." A third confessed. But the most impactful thing came a week after the interview was published. I received an email from an address I immediately recognized. It was David, my former son-in-law. "Julieta," he wrote, "I saw your interview on YouTube. I need you to know that I completely agree with you. What Rebecca said to you was unforgivable, and the way she has treated you for years is unacceptable. I myself have been a witness to how she manipulates and uses you, but I never had the courage to confront her because we were so dependent on your financial help." He continued, "I want you to know that the kids miss you a lot and they don't understand why you don't come to see them anymore. Rebecca has told them that you're sick and can't visit, but I believe they deserve to know the truth when they are older." The email ended, "I know it's probably too late for apologies, but I wanted you to know that at least one person in this family acknowledges how badly we treated you and how much you sacrificed for us. I hope you are happy in your new life." I read the email 3 times before deciding how to respond. Finally, I wrote, "David, I appreciate your honesty, but apologies after the fact don't change the damage done. I hope this experience helps you to be a better husband and father, and that you teach your children to value the people who love them before it's too late." It was the first time someone in my family had publicly acknowledged the abuse I had suffered. It didn't change my decision to stay away, but it did give me a sense of validation that I had been needing for years. My new life in Switzerland felt like stepping into a long-forgotten dream. The very air seemed lighter, purer, as though it carried away the heaviness of my past with each breath I took. Mornings began with the gentle ringing of church bells drifting across the rooftops of Zurich, their echo rolling through the valley like a calm reminder that I had been granted a second chance. I would open my balcony doors and inhale deeply, the crisp scent of the lake mingling with the sweetness of blooming flowers from window boxes. In the distance, the Alps stood eternal, their snow-capped peaks glistening in the light of dawn. They felt like guardians, silent, majestic, unyielding, reminding me that resilience was possible, even after decades of storms. For the first time in years, I woke not with dread but with anticipation. My days were not measured by what I could sacrifice for someone else, but by small joys that belonged entirely to me. I walked along cobblestone streets that carried no memory of humiliation, no echo of Rebecca's voice. I was not the mother who gives, or the grandmother who rescues. Here, I was simply Julieta, a woman with stories, with laughter, with value in her own right. Friendship bloomed where I least expected it. Alvara, my neighbor, quickly became my confidant. She invited me to her kitchen for tea, where the smell of freshly baked bread lingered in the air and conversations flowed without expectation. Others soon followed, a group of women who welcomed me into their walking club, sharing laughter as our steps crunched over gravel paths, winding through alpine meadows. A retired professor who loved books as much as I did and often lent me volumes filled with his own handwritten notes. These people wanted nothing from me but my presence. For the first time in decades, I did not feel like a bank, or a babysitter, or a shadow tethered to someone else's demands. I felt like a friend, a peer, a woman seen. I rediscovered hobbies that had gathered dust in forgotten corners of my life. Painting, for instance, I had not touched a brush in years, but now my hands itched for color. My first strokes were clumsy, but I laughed instead of criticizing myself. Soon the canvases filled with landscapes, rolling hills, shimmering lakes, flowers in bloom. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had lost. Hiking, too, became a passion. I climbed trails that challenged my body, my lungs burning with effort, my heart soaring with pride. Standing at the top of a ridge, the world sprawling beneath me, I whispered words I had once been too afraid to believe. I am alive. I am enough. I am free. Evenings were gentler. I would curl on my small sofa with a book, the lamp casting a pool of warm light, while the lake reflected the last blush of twilight outside my window. Sometimes I sipped tea. Sometimes a glass of wine. Always there was a quietness that wrapped around me, a peace I had never thought I would know again. Financial stability returned to me, not as a flood, but as a steady stream. My pension, though humble, stretched further in Switzerland when combined with careful budgeting. I no longer stared at my bank account with anxiety gnawing at my chest, but more than stability, what I cherished most was dignity. I was no longer someone whose worth was measured in dollars spent on others. I was Julieta, the woman, the neighbor, the friend. 6 months passed in this way, and then one perfect spring morning, as cherry blossoms floated down like pink snow, the phone rang. It was Alvara. "Julieta," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. "You must hear this. Rebecca." She lost the house. The world seemed to tilt. My chest tightened, not out of bitterness but out of instinctive worry for my grandchildren. They were innocent, and their faces rose before my eyes instantly. "What happened?" I asked, my voice careful, steady. "The bank foreclosed last week," Alvara explained. "David couldn't keep steady work. They fell behind on payments, and since you are the co-signer who exercised her rights, the bank proceeded. Rebecca came to me yesterday, crying hysterically. But listen, Julieta, the children are fine. They've moved to a small apartment across town. David has a job in a factory now, not glamorous, but steady. Rebecca had to go back to work too." I closed my eyes. A tide of conflicting emotions rose inside me. Sorrow, yes, for the children's displacement. Concern for how Rebecca would handle the weight of her new reality. But mingled with it was something I could not deny, a quiet, steady satisfaction, not vindictiveness, not gloating, but justice. For once, Rebecca and David were meeting the consequences of their own choices. For once, they were standing without the crutch I had always provided. Alvara hesitated, then added softly, "Rebecca asked me if I knew how to reach you. She told me she wants to apologize, that she finally understands what she lost when she lost you." My heart clenched. I had dreamed of apologies, begged the stars for them during long nights of grief, yet the memory of that terrible birthday lingered. Her voice, cold, sharp, merciless. "The best gift you could give me is to die. Some words do not fade, no matter how much time passes." "And what did you tell her?" I whispered. "I told her," Alvara said firmly, "that some wounds cannot be healed, and some words cannot be unsaid. I told her you are thriving now, Julieta, and that it's better for you both if she does not disturb your peace." Tears filled my eyes, not for Rebecca, but for Alvara, for the fierce loyalty of this new friend who protected what I had built. She was right. My peace was fragile but sacred, and I would not risk it for empty promises that might never be kept. That afternoon, as though fate had conspired to weave justice fully into my life, the phone rang again. This time it was Anil, my lawyer. "Julieta," he said, his tone warm, "I have good news. Because the bank sold the house, and you were the co-signer, you are entitled to recover your initial investment of $150,000, plus accumulated interest." My breath caught. "How much in total?" "185,000, he replied. "It will be transferred to your Swiss account next week." I pressed my hand to my chest, stunned. That money I had mourned it as lost forever. To have it not only returned but increased felt like the universe whispering, "You did the right thing." "And there's more," Annelle continued. "Your old apartment back home has finally sold. After expenses and commissions, you'll receive $95,000. Altogether, almost $300,000. $300,000. The number rang in my ears like a bell tolling freedom. With that, combined with my savings and the small investments I had begun in Switzerland, my net worth now exceeded $500,000. At 72, I was wealthier than I had ever been, not only in money but in independence, in possibility, in dignity. That night, I walked to my favorite restaurant by the lake. The air was cool, scented with lilacs, the water shimmering with moonlight. I ordered champagne, the bubbles rising like tiny stars, and I lifted my glass, not to Rebecca, not to revenge, but to myself. To the woman who had survived humiliation and heartbreak, who had chosen courage when despair seemed easier. To the woman who had finally said enough and found herself again. As the glass touched my lips, I whispered, "To dignity, to peace, to Julieta reborn." The following morning, sunlight spilled gently across my room, painting golden streaks over the wooden floor. As I sipped my coffee, a thought crystallized with clarity. My story was not just my own. It belonged to countless women who had loved too much, sacrificed too deeply, and been left hollow. Women who were told that their worth existed only in what they gave, not in who they were. So I began to write. At first it was tentative, scribbled notes, fragments of memory, sentences that felt too heavy to place on paper. But the more I wrote, the lighter I became. Each word was a release, each page a reclamation. I did not write to punish Rebecca or to seek pity. I wrote to name what had been nameless for too long: emotional abuse from adult children, the unspoken epidemic hidden behind polite smiles and family photographs. I reached out to a Swiss publisher specializing in self-help and personal growth. Brigitte, the editor, listened with tears shining in her eyes as I told my story. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "Julieta, your voice is a lantern in the dark. It will guide so many who believe they are alone." Her words ignited a fire in me. For 3 months, I wrote with urgency, pouring not only my history but also the wisdom I had clawed from the wreckage. I described how to recognize manipulation disguised as love, how to set boundaries without drowning in guilt, how to rebuild a life when the role of selfless mother had left nothing behind. I titled the manuscript "When Love Hurts: Freeing Yourself from Family Emotional Abuse After 70. 8 months later, the book was published. I expected it to pass quietly into the world, perhaps touching a handful of lives. Instead, it spread like wildfire. It became a bestseller in several European countries, translated into multiple languages, and, to my astonishment, it sparked conversations long silenced by shame. Letters poured in, some typed, some handwritten, some smudged with tears. Maria from Spain wrote, "Your book showed me I am not a bad mother for refusing to finance my grown son's endless debts. For the first time in years, I feel free." Carmen from Mexico confessed, "I always thought true love meant sacrificing myself completely. Your story made me realize love without respect is not love at all." Rosa from Argentina shared, "After reading your words, I sold the big house that chained me to guilt and moved into a small apartment I can afford alone. I sleep in peace for the first time in a decade." Each letter was a balm, proof that my pain had been transformed into healing for others. But one letter, delivered a year after the book's release, moved me beyond words. It came from a young mother named Andrea in Italy. Her handwriting was neat but urgent. "Mrs. Johnson," she wrote, "I am 30. My 5-year-old mother has given everything to me and my siblings. After reading your book, I realized we were treating her as Rebecca treated you. Yesterday, I called her. I apologized. I promised to help her live her own dreams. Thank you for saving us before it was too late." I held the letter against my chest and wept. For the first time, my suffering felt not just redeemed but sanctified. What I had endured had become a seed of change in another family, sparing them from the same destruction. 2 years after I had stepped off the plane in Switzerland, another letter arrived. The handwriting was uneven, uncertain, childlike. My hands trembled as I tore it open. "Dear Grandma Julieta," it began, "Dad told us the truth. He said Mom said very ugly things to you and that's why you left. We want you to know we miss you. We are proud of you for being brave. One day, when we are older, we want to visit you in Switzerland. We love you." The letter was signed by both of my grandchildren, now 12. Enclosed were drawings, me smiling beneath snow-capped mountains, surrounded by flowers and hearts. Tears poured down my cheeks, but they were not bitter. They were sweet, cleansing, filled with gratitude. I wrote back that same day. "My dearest ones," I began, "your words are the most beautiful gift I have received in years. I love you deeply and always will, no matter the distance. One day, when you are free to make your own decisions, my door and my heart will be open to you. Until then, hold fast to this truth. Words have the power to heal or to destroy. Build your lives on respect and kindness, for only then will love last. I love you endlessly. Your Grandma, Julieta." That evening, I placed their drawings on my wall, above my desk where I wrote. Each time I looked at them, I felt not regret but affirmation. I had chosen rightly. By protecting my dignity, I had preserved the possibility of love that was honest and pure. Now, 3 years after the birthday that once shattered me, I sit on my balcony overlooking Zurich. The mountains glow pink in the evening sun, the lake reflects the sky's fading gold, and the city hums softly below. I am 75 years old. I have assets of more than $600,000, a best-selling book that has touched lives across continents, and friends who know me as Julieta not as a role, not as a resource, but as a person. Rebecca once asked me on that terrible birthday to disappear, and in the most unexpected way, I granted her wish. I disappeared from her world, yes, from her control, from her indifference, from the role of sacrificial mother, but in leaving her world, I found my own. She lost a mother who had loved her unconditionally. She lost the safety net that had shielded her from consequences. I lost only the chains that had bound me. My disappearance was her gift. My rebirth was mine. And as I lift my eyes to the horizon, where the mountains stand eternal and the lake stretches wide, I know this. Every tear, every heartbreak, every lonely night, it was all worth it, because it brought me here. To this peace, to this life, to Julieta, whole at last.